which we live together. One sun shining on you and me. One ocean flows into another. One day we all will be free. One day we all will be free.
It's been nearly 75 years since the first use of an atomic bomb, and that was dropped on Hiroshima, Japan on August 6, 1945. Hundreds of thousands of people have died because of that initial blast and radiation-related illnesses directly after the bombing. And deaths resulting from the radiation continue to this day. Hello, I'm Brent Carlson. Welcome to Brethren Voices. There have been many programs about the devastation caused by the atomic bombing that day in Hiroshima and the bombing 3 days later in Nagasaki, Japan. Since its beginnings, the Church of the Brethren has expressed opposition to war and violence. It was on August 7, 1965, 20 years after the atomic bombing of Hiroshima, that Barbara Reynolds and others founded the World Friendship Center, dedicated to providing a place where people from many nations can meet and share their experiences. It's a place where people can come together from all over the world and reflect on peace and a world without nuclear weapons. We made a trip to the home of the World Friendship Center and met with two Brethren volunteer service workers who are currently directing the activities of the center. They are Roger and Kathy Edmark from Linwood, Washington. They are serving there for a 2-year term of service with Brethren volunteers. Everyone has a story to tell, and we thought you should hear their story. We asked them how they decided to go to Hiroshima to do 2 years of Brethren volunteer service.
It intrigued us because we've both enjoyed Japan in the past. Kathy can tell you a little about her upbringing, which you'd understand why she likes Japan or is very interested in Japan. I had a lot of business trips here. I was surprised when I was required to go figure out how many there were for a visa that I'd been here 26 times. So I've enjoyed Japan. I often pick Japan as a place to go when I had a business trip.
My parents were missionaries, so when I was 4, I lived on a small island southeast of Okinawa, which more people have heard of, Miyakojima, and was there for 2 years, then 2 years in Kobe, Japan, while my dad went to language school, and then back to Miyako for a year, then to the U.S. for a year, and then when we went back overseas to the mission field, there were too many of us kids for Mom to feel comfortable teaching us, so we lived on the island of Okinawa, and I went to Okinawa Christian School for the next 5 years while Dad commuted to Miyakojima to do the mission work. So I grew up in Japan as a child from 4 to 15, and that was very natural to me, and it was exciting to think that we could come back.
So when we went to this insight session, this was 15 years ago. At the time they asked if we might be interested in someday serving a place like World Friendship Center. And we said, yes, that sounds very interesting. And so we put our names in as possible directors someday. And we didn't really know whether that would ever happen or what would happen until we were ready. But I think it intrigued us enough that I had a business trip 1 year after that, and it was to Tokyo. So Kathy came over, and we took the train here to Hiroshima and stayed at World Friendship Center for a night, met a couple people here, saw the area, took a tour of the Peace Park and went to the museum, and it kind of confirmed that, yes, this would be a great place to give service someday. And then right after we retired, we were called and they asked, do you guys think you might be ready to serve there? And we were just trying to navigate retirement, so we made a big list of what we had to get accomplished, And we told them that we weren't sure by the time they wanted to know whether we were the right people for that particular time. And so we said, but if you call us again in a couple of years, we'll be ready. They called in 2 years, and we said, yeah, we're ready to go.
Brethren Volunteer Service has a 3-week training and orientation program. And we asked Kathy and Roger about that experience, as most of the volunteers are much younger than they.
And we spent 3 weeks at Camp Colorado, and we had great speakers that came in to give us different aspects of what it might be involved with volunteer work, and also we spent a lot of time with I think there was 22 people there. Majority of them were younger. And, it was a great experience. We really enjoyed it. We actually had an opportunity to go to the mid-year retreat that they have for the people in the United States, because we hadn't left the States yet. So we went down to Florida and saw all the people from Unit 319, which was our BVS unit, and that was kind of fun too.
And unlike most volunteers, they had already decided where they wanted to serve: Hiroshima, Japan.
That was one aspect of it that was a little bit different, because we did know where we were going. We still had a lot of things we didn't know about the World Friendship Center and what our responsibilities would be here. So they have a nice packet with BVS of all kinds of information, and so we had opportunity to look at that at the orientation, and read a lot of things from previous directors, and that helped us to understand a little bit better what we might be doing here, but we still didn't know exactly.
The World Friendship Center was established in August of 1965, and we asked about the connection to the Church of the Brethren and its goals.
The World Friendship Center was started by Barbara Reynolds, who was a Quaker, and she heard the Hibakusha, survivors of the A-bomb, stories, and was very compassionate towards them, and decided she wanted a place where they could come and share their stories, and people could come and listen to them. The theme for World Friendship Center is fostering peace one friend at a time. And I'm very impressed with that theme. And we definitely see it happen as the guests come and hear the stories of what life was really like when the bomb was dropped, and the changes it made, the devastation, the terrible pain. And then they're also very clear to let people know that there's a big difference between regular bombs and an atomic bomb, and that is that the radiation affects them for the rest of their lives.
Barbara had been kind of very involved with active protests of nuclear weapons for a long time, but she felt that she wanted to do some affirming things, very positive for peace, and she felt that peace started with each individual, and that therefore as people came and heard Hibakusha stories, and just people could communicate and talk with each other, that this was a real avenue for people to consider what they could do to foster peace in their lives and those around them. So both of these things were important to her.
The Peace Center is located very near, approximately a mile away from the epicenter where that atomic bomb was exploded in 1945, where everything was destroyed, and where images were actually burned into the concrete. Kathy and Roger shared with us some of the things that visitors will experience at the Peace Park.
Well, the Peace Park was a central part of the town, really close to where the epicenter of the bomb blast was. And the bomb blast was up in the sky. I mean, it detonated before it hit the ground, for I guess their thinking is had maximum power that way. And the Peace Park is right just about underneath where this was. So everything that was in the Peace Park area, which was just a residential part of town, was destroyed. So when they started rebuilding Hiroshima, and they wanted to dedicate the whole city to be a city of peace. They picked this central location as the place to create a park where they could remember the people and remember the events that happened. And so they built a museum there. They made a very nice park setting that's where all these monuments and things are. It's really close to the structure called the A-bomb Dome, which was left there as a reminder of what happened, and it's kind of like the shell of the original big building that it had been, but it's kind of a reminder.
One world in which we live together, one sun shining on you and me, one ocean flows into another, one day we all will be free, one day we all will be free.
一瞬が生涯を変え一生が永遠を変え一人ほどとも癒された心一人ごと愛解放一人ごと愛解放
One world in which we live together, one sun shining on you and me, one ocean flows into another, one day we all will be free, one day we all will be free.
その日羊もライオンも誇りも光も収め武器が好きに愛の涙喜びにあがないは王冠あがないは王冠
One world in which we live together, one sun shining on you and me, one ocean flows into another, one day we all will be free, one day we all will be free.
その日皆作り主の前に精一杯生きるその日まで支え合い互いに愛し合い共に子供大人もみんな子供大人もみんな
One world in which we live together, one sun shining on you and me, one ocean flows into another, one day we all will be free, one day we all will be free.
There's a structure there that's over a box that contains books with the names of all of the people known who have died since the day of the A-bomb up until current history, books with the names of all those victims. And then through that you can see the flame that is going to burn until all nuclear weapons are disarmed. And they're still deciding what will happen when that happens. It had been thought they would extinguish the flame, but now there's talk about leaving it lit as a reminder that not to start in again.
And then just beyond that, you can see the A-bomb dome. So
it's a very impressive view.
yeah, very symbolic.
As BVS volunteers and directors of the World Friendship Center, Kathy and Roger have a long list of responsibilities, and neither one of them speaks much Japanese. However, one of the things on their list is assisting people learning how to speak English, and they actually have classes from beginning levels to advanced levels every week.
The facility here is an old Japanese home, and so the environment is one of kind of being in someone's home. And that's the way we think of it, and we try to treat the people that come just like they're, friends of the family. We have 7 rooms. Then we provide a simple breakfast for them in the morning, because some of the early activities occur right here at World Friendship Center. So it makes it a real nice place for them to stay. We basically, it's like a kind of a scaled down bed and breakfast. We teach conversational English, and what it really is we have about between 3 and 8 students depending on the class. The classes are Tuesday through Fridays and one on Saturday, and we gather with people who want to speak English, and sometimes they want to be able to understand what they're reading in a book, and usually the books are something related to peace or the events here in Hiroshima or in Nagasaki, or they just bring interesting things that have happened in their life and they explain it to everyone else in the class in English, and this gives them an opportunity to use their English, and we're there to help them if they get stumbled on some words and things like that. But it's actually a very fun time. Even though they've been working on their English, they still don't have other people to talk with in English. So a number of the people that come to the class are actually guides or involved with an activity where they need to use English, and they want to come to make their English better. And so when they're guiding a group that happens to be English, it helps if they have had more opportunity to speak in English to be able to do that effectively.
The volunteers also arrange for local guides for the Peace Park and set up interviews with survivors who wish to tell their experiences about surviving the blast and the radiation.
Yeah, we arrange, we have about a dozen people who volunteer as guides, who have studied all of the things in the Peace Park, understand the significance to all of the different monuments and different structures and things that are in the Peace Park. And they'll tell a little bit about that, and a lot of them have stories in their own personal lives that make why they are doing that even more significant. And sometimes that becomes a little bit of what they're able to share with people.
Some of them can speak their story in English, and others have interpreters who will listen to what the hibakusha is saying and then say it in English. And the stories are very hard to hear, but I think extremely important. I think we hear that the A-bomb was dropped and many people died, and that's about the extent of it. But when you hear their stories, you hear about the suffering and the memories that they have, and it's very haunting and very, very emotional.
The reality, though, is that this was an event that happened getting close to 75 years next year. And so the number of people that actually were alive during that time and experienced it are getting smaller and smaller. So it's important that people get the opportunity to hear these stories from the people that lived through it as they continue to age, and there's actually fewer and fewer hibakusha available to tell their stories. the kind of encouraging thing is that the guests that come here to World Friendship Center are all ages, and many are, I would say, in their 20 to 40-year-old age. So they're people who, as Brent said, don't know much about what happened here, but have an interest of finding out. And I think that's encouraging that there's a lot of people that are wanting to understand what happened at Hiroshima.
We'll be getting back with Kathy and Roger in a moment, but here's a message from Heifer International, which began assisting people with hunger issues and learning to be independent just over 75 years ago. We've been meeting with Brethren Volunteer Service workers Kathy and Roger Edmark, who are volunteering at the World Friendship Center in Hiroshima, Japan. We were wondering, how do people find out about the Peace Center?
I think in the past there was an awful lot of word of mouth. Somebody stayed here and they told others about it, and that was very common. We also are on TripAdvisor, so if someone's looking for a place in Hiroshima, go to TripAdvisor. We're in there. We actually are the highest rated facility for reviews.
Most of the people who visit the Peace Center have not been to Hiroshima before. And we ask, what should they be expecting? And is it safe?
Having been in many foreign countries myself through the years when I was doing business trips, I would say that Japan is actually one of the friendliest places that I know that I've been to. Especially, I found that Hiroshima is very friendly. And it seems perhaps if you're only go to Tokyo, you may not see quite as much friendliness as you do once you get out of Tokyo. So I think, and it's an interesting place because there is a lot of cultural things here that are different. So I think that adds a lot of interest to the things that you see and you might do just to understand what life is like here in Japan. And the food's great here.
And the country is absolutely beautiful. There are
Yes.
so many beautiful places to go.
Yes, so really
Right.
recommend
And the
it.
travel's pretty easy too. I mean, we've
Yeah.
used streetcars and
Trains.
and buses and Shinkansen, the bullet train, and
Yeah. It's not necessarily the cheapest place in the world to go. And so that might be a challenge sometimes. But there are ways to get around the country that are a little less expensive.
We thank Roger and Kathy Edmark for their story. So, you might be wondering about Barbara Reynolds, the founder of the World Friendship Center. She has a whole story just by herself. In 1951, Barbara and her husband, Earl Reynolds, and their children were sent to Hiroshima as part of a U.S. study team charged with examining the children exposed to radiation. This work was in conjunction with the Atomic Bomb Casualty Commission. 3 years later, Barbara, Earl, and 2 of their 3 children left Hiroshima with 3 other young Japanese crewmen on their newly launched yacht named Phoenix of Hiroshima. They traveled the world, and the family's interest in world peace developed. They even sailed into the Forbidden Zone in the South Pacific, where the United States was testing nuclear bombs. Then she returned to Hiroshima. The story of Barbara Reynolds can be found on the website of the World Friendship Center. We invite you to check it out. And the story of the search for peace continues. This is Brent Carlson, wishing you peace without nuclear weapons and war.
without you.
その日皆作り主の前に精一杯生きるその日まで支え合い互いに愛し合い共に子供大人もみんな子供大人もみんな
One world in which we live together. One side.